Hello, everybody, and welcome back. We're here at Uber Studios. You're familiar with it by now, I hope. Today, we're going to talk about why ex-Mormons are angry. I want to soften that a little bit because this video is not a video in which I'm going to condemn people or chastise people for being hurt and turning to anger as a coping mechanism after leaving a painful and damaging religion. That's not what we're doing here today. This isn't a bad mouth thing. I was angry for a long time. Sometimes I still get a little bit frustrated. It's totally natural. It's totally valid, and it's probably just part of the process. So I want to talk from my personal experience about why I think I was angry and what helped me stop being angry. Okay, so if this is where you find yourself now, then I really hope that this is helpful for you. If this is no longer where you find yourself, maybe send this video to somebody who is in this place, or just skip it. There's a lot of other stuff that I hope will be useful that I'm also going to talk about. If you feel like you're past this point, please comment if I have my finger on the pulse at all. I know that I'm just speaking from my experience, but a lot of us in this kind of phase of life and this phase of Mormonism, even if you want to call it that, I do feel like there are similarities that a lot of us share. And so if you felt the same way that I did, and if I am describing you as I'm describing myself, put something in the comments just so that other people who are watching this, who maybe are in that angry stage right now, can see that, okay, this is a real thing, and maybe I will get through this. Just kind of giving people hope a little bit in the comment section. So yeah, with all of that out of the way, I want to start by just saying, I think the natural response to some of your deepest held ideas being challenged and eventually discovering that they are not what they claimed to be, I think a natural response to that phenomenon is anger. But I don't think anger isn't really a primary emotion. Anger is typically a secondary emotion. So I'm trying to figure out what is underneath the anger. Before we talk about why we are angry and maybe what's underneath that anger, I want to talk about what deep ideas even are and what deeply held beliefs are, why it's so painful when they are questioned. A deeply held belief, simply put, is an idea that other ideas rest on. Okay, so if you have 20 ideas and they're all resting on top of one another, then the one at the top is not a deep belief, and the one at the bottom is a very deep belief, right? Because all of the other implications of your life, I'm now thinking about It's Always Sunny because of the implication. All the other assumptions and implications and kind of paths that you could have gone are now they have to line up with this whole structure here. There really is no better way of saying it than a deep idea is an idea upon which other ideas rest. And so I'll give you an example. When I was a teenager, I had a lot of things going on in my body, a lot of things going on in my head. I had passions. One of my passions was music. I wanted to become a professional musician. I wanted to travel. I wanted to make music. I wanted to be in a band. I wanted to do the whole road life. That's what I wanted to do when I was in high school. The issue with that for me was that it contradicted with a more deeply held belief that I had, which was I have to be a dad one day. I have to be a family man. I have to be around for my kids. So right there you have a more shallow belief, which was my desire to become a musician, is now being contradicted by a deeper belief. Well, which one do you think won? Obviously the deeper belief. So in that sense, and our culture does this to us, right? Every culture instills in us values and beliefs that we then stack other things on. And if it doesn't align with your core values, if it doesn't align with the things at the bottom, then you scrap it and you don't live that out. And so sometimes people can grow up and years can pass and they can get rid of this belief down here, and they can say, I didn't really need to follow Mormonism and the family path that it set for me, but now I've lost 15 years and I can't go back and start a band in high school anymore. And so that time is now lost. And usually that causes grief And part of grief is anger. So maybe that's one reason that ex-Mormons could be so angry, right? And that's why I feel like I was very angry, because I felt like I had lost time that I couldn't get back. And I lost that time doing things that, looking back, weren't important to me and are not important to me anymore. And when all of that is based on false evidence and untruths, that is a hard pill to swallow. So that I hope that I've done a good job of explaining what deep ideas even are and why they could cause anger in and of themselves. The next thing that I want to talk about, there's this term that gets thrown around in kind of ex-religious or post-Mormon communities that you have to now deconstruct. What does that mean, right? What is deconstructing? Well, if we return to kind of like our tower analogy, what deconstruction literally is, I think it's a perfect word for what it describes. You have to take out layer by layer. You have to kind of bring a sledgehammer down on these ideas and figure out if they stand on their own. Are they inherently good ideas, or are they only good ideas because you were taught to think that they were good ideas? And it really does require a lot of critical thinking. And it really is a very painful process because you're cutting into the core of who you are. And as a side tangent, this is the way that my brain works. I relate this to, like, this is going to seem way out of left field, but if you do like a very long fast with the purpose of maybe cleaning out your gut microbiome. I know we've taken a weird left turn here. If you take like a long fast to try and clean out your gut microbiome, you want to do some sort of a cleanse, right? Well, a lot of people focus on the cleanse, which is good, right? You drink more water, you eat less grease, you eat less carbs, you eat less sugar and fat, right? That's good. That's clearing out a lot of bacteria in your stomach that aren't the healthy, good kind. However, when you break your fast and you break your cleanse, some people forget that now every single thing that you put into your mouth is going to increase the population of that kind of bacteria in your gut. And so it's very important what you then put into your body, because you're regrowing from the ground up. And so you're going to go through a phase of nothing, right? That's that nihilism that comes in when you leave a religion. And it's not a bad thing, and it's not a good thing. It just is the process, right? When you are breaking down each individual core value down to the very basement of your soul and your being, when you break all of those, there's a period of time where there is nothing there. And so you're kind of, for lack of a better word, you're kind of vulnerable, right? And so that nakedness, that kind of aloneness can be very scary. That could be another reason why ex-Mormons get so angry. In the very core of our evolutionary beings, we are prey animals, right? We're not meant to be at the top of the food chain, right? We're not a lion. We don't just walk into any, you put a lion anywhere in the world, it's pretty much top of the food chain, right? Except for the ocean, I guess. But we are not that. We've learned to be that, but I think a lot of our anxieties as a culture and as a civilization and as a species is because some part of our internal organism knows that we are not number one, but somehow we are. So that vulnerability can make us scared. And a lot of times people lash out in anger because deep down they're actually scared. I think part of why I was angry during my faith transition was because I was afraid that I didn't have any ideas for what the afterlife, for what was going to happen in the afterlife anymore. I didn't have any ideas about what the purpose of life was anymore. I really didn't have anything to lean on because I had broken down all of my walls and foundations internally because I was questioning everything. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think in that period of your life, maybe focus on one thing that you do think is good for you. Maybe one goal that you have that you think, if my life's purpose could be nothing other than this, my life would be valuable to me. And that's really all that matters, is that you see your life and as meaningful and valuable according to your own judgment, right? Because we don't have prophets anymore. We don't have leaders anymore. We are finding truth wherever we can, and we're judging the validity of that according to our own moral compass. And that's very freeing, but it's very scary. Or maybe that's another reason that we get very angry after leaving the Mormon church. I want to now zoom out for a second, and I want to talk about maybe a way that we could conceptualize a helpful God as ex-Mormons. I personally don't find any truth or any sort of validity to the idea that there is a self-aware, conscious, sentient, interactive God living somewhere out there. I find it less likely that that thing lives on a planet called Kolob, for fairness sake. But even the idea of some sort of awareness who is interacting with our planet and created our planet, I find it very unlikely that that thing exists out there. So why do I bring up God at all? Well, I think that if we were to look at stories from the Bible in a more open-minded way, maybe it could give us a clue as to what the writers of that book were trying to tell us and why those stories were told verbally for so long, right? We know, and a lot of people who criticize the Bible will tell you, that it's just a bunch of stories that were repeated orally before people knew how to write. And then eventually when we could write, they were written down, right? So that's true, right? That's totally true. And that's valid. My question is, what was the use of telling them orally for so long? What did civilization get out of that? And maybe one thing that we got out of that as a culture, as a civilization, is the idea that we are made in the image of God. Now, I don't mean that that there's a being out there who has 2 eyes and a nose and a mouth and a beard in that case, and we're made in that image, right? I don't mean that at all, because I don't think that that's true. And I don't think that people back then thought that that was true either. I think they are a little bit smarter than we thought they were, and they probably were speaking more and more metaphorically. Maybe what they were trying to indicate was that there is some sort of ability within us human beings, to find a situation that is not good, to come across chaos and to make it right. Maybe we can make the best of it. And if you read the very first story in the Old Testament, in the very, very first page of Genesis, when it says that God created earth from a void, right? A void without any sort of construction or organization. He created an organized version of habitable space out of a void of nothingness. And so that's what we do, that's what faith crises are. You come across a void and you say, well, how can I make the best of this? How can I organize my life such that it still works for me and I can move forward and I know what direction up is, and I can orient myself in this map of of psychological structure, or whatever we want to call it, right? How can I still see myself as the hero, and how can I overcome the monster, is kind of that idea. And so I think if we were to take a step back and we were to say, human beings are made in the image of something that is able to come across chaotic nothingness, or come across stress and make it right and turn it into an organized process, and turn it into something rigid, sometimes too rigid, but something safe. That's a perfect description of human beings, right? And I think the natural progression of these things is, we're afraid of death, right? This is maybe what happens to religion. We're afraid of death, and so we construct maybe a way that we can see meaning in spite of death, and a way that we can make sacrifices, and those sacrifices are worth something. And religion takes, it really steelmans the idea of the ultimate sacrifice, and it says, well, if a perfect guy had to innocently suffer for all of the sins of the entire world, that would be a pretty good sacrifice. What could happen if somebody sacrificed something like that? Maybe he could save everybody. Maybe he could justify the fact that existence has pain in it to begin with, right? Religion is trying to answer questions like this, but because of this, it's almost like, in the same way that the universe is constantly pushing towards entropy, it's almost like human beings and organizations are constantly pushing towards rigidity. And so you have like, again, you have like these big balances, these big conflicting, fighting ideas. You have entropy versus rigidity. And maybe the only person who can really traverse those two things without getting too sucked into one or the other is the sole individual. You know, maybe maybe the sole individual is too small. Maybe you need a small group of people who support you, right? Maybe you need I think maybe the story of Noah and the ark, maybe when it says that he was perfect in his generations, maybe what it's trying to say is, here's a man who made sure that his relationship with his dad was good, and his mom was good, and his siblings was good, and his children was good. And maybe when the chaos of the flood came over the world, his family was okay because they had built these strong relationships that kept them afloat, right? And so maybe the point of that whole story is, when you build a support system around you, you can overcome whatever confronts you. And so you have chaos, which is like, you have like this big scary entropic, I don't know. You have entropy, which is constantly trying to make things more chaotic. And you have like human organizations, which are constantly trying to make things more rigid. And you have these two ideas that are never going to stop fighting. And if you're in too big of a group and you're using kind of like the hive mind group think, you'll stray towards religion. And you'll stray towards rigidity, and you'll be too organized, and you'll be too structured, and there's no life there. There's no art. But you can't let yourself fall into the ocean all by yourself. There's an incredible line by a band called American Football. It's in a song called Everyone Is Dressed Up. I'm looking at it right now. And the line goes like this. It says, everybody knows that the best way to describe the ocean to a blind man is to push him in. You can't just fall into like entropy, into chaos, into the abyss alone. I think we're too small for that. I'm not saying we don't have the power within us, and I'm not saying that we should see ourselves as weak. I'm saying we should be realistic, and we're going up against a lot here. There's a whole world out there. I think if we build these small support systems around us, you know, if we do build the ark around us, I think more than ever, especially after leaving religion and going through all the pain that's caused there, I think that's the only way to really overcome the anger. So this has been a lot of rambling. I really hope that I was able to communicate something intelligible, because I kind of took on more than I was expecting with this video. I wasn't expecting to go into some of those places, but I feel like it's valuable, and I'm only speaking from my experience. So if this isn't helpful for you, it's fine. It's really fine. I won't take any sort of, I won't be insulted. I don't care, to be honest with you. My image of myself is way higher than if everybody thinks that I'm smart or cool or whatever. But if this was helpful for you, and you know somebody else who could maybe use like a hello today, or a virtual hug, or a real hug, or whatever, you know, find your arc, build your arc, build a support system, become perfect in your generations. 10 years from now, if you're not still going to be angry at your parents that they raised you like this. You're still not going to feel frustrated that your siblings are still active. You're going to be past that. Human relationships are more than religion, to be honest with you. And it's only religion that tells us that they're not. So be good to yourself. Find something that is meaningful to you. Come up with a purpose that matters to you and that you are happy with. And remember that you don't have to ask anybody else if that's okay. If it's okay to you, it's good. So we're going to leave it right there. That was a lot. I am planning on doing a video very soon where we kind of deconstruct God in general. But I do think that we got a good start today. So everybody take care of yourselves, and we'll see you next time.